So I got a super exciting one for you today, folks. In this video, I want to go over data and file management, specifically a realistic approach for budget-minded photographers and videographers that understand the importance of redundancy, but also don't want to spend a fortune doing it. I'm also going to explain how I manage my files and my workflow when it comes to client data and backups. Intro. Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name's Caleb and I am a wedding photographer based in North Carolina, but over the last few decades I've traveled all over photographing weddings and other different things. Sorry, it's been a while. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to upload videos super consistently, but hopefully I will get better at that in the future. If you'd like to see me more often, do me a favor and click the subscribe button. Help me get to 1,000 subs before the end of the year. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and like to see more like it. So today I wanted to talk about the exciting world of file management for photographers. I know it's super exciting, but unfortunately taking awesome photos is not where your job ends. If you've been in the media world for any amount of time, I'm sure you've heard of the 3-2-1 rule for data management. But today I want to explain to you my workflow and hopefully give you some tips on developing a file management system that's clean and cost efficient, but most importantly, one that's redundant and protects you and your client's data. Because let's face it, losing a client's wedding photos can be next to impossible to recover from. So to get started, I want to go over some of the gear and processes that I use. There's a ton of other options out there, but this is what makes me feel the most secure when dealing with client data. And as always, there will be affiliate links down in the description. So let me begin by saying that if you are shooting professionally, weddings, or one-time events especially, your camera should have dual card slots. You should be shooting to both of them. In other words, every photo you take, the raw file is copied to both cards. This is your very first step towards redundancy. I do most of all my work, editing and data management from a laptop. But I have an additional laptop that was pretty cheap, as long as an additional external hard drive that I carry to all my jobs. The only thing that computer and hard drive is used for is for dumping files off the camera. There are other options out there if you're willing to pay $650 or more for what's essentially just a standalone hard drive with a card reader built into it. But I found that for around half that price, you can get a decent laptop and a 2 terabyte solid state hard drive, which I believe is a better option. But let's be honest, having a second laptop just for data dumps is kind of a luxury. If you're looking for an on-site backup solution and don't want to carry your main editing laptop around, you're going to spend around $700 anyway. So a second laptop and hard drive is probably the cheaper way to go, and it gives you a backup editing option should your main system ever die. But this is a luxury, so feel free to take that or leave it. Second, I have a main editing laptop and a high-quality solid-state drive that mainly stays in my house. This is a pretty hefty machine performance-wise, so it gets most of the photo and video editing workload. Specifically, I use a 2024 Asus G14 with an external monitor, and I couldn't be happier. It's super powerful, handles all the photo and video editing that I've needed to do. This is also the computer and the SSD that all my backups are sourced from. And finally, I have a desktop computer and a NAS or network attached storage set up at home that can be accessed by any computer on my network. This desktop and NAS server is where I have final hard drive backups for all my media and projects. So as far as workflow goes, this may sound a little bit crazy, but I don't use card readers. I pull the data directly off the camera via the USB-C port, but I keep a card reader in my bag just in case the port on my camera dies or something catastrophic happens. But I try my absolute hardest to make sure those cards never get removed from the host camera. Also, I never delete photos in camera. This can cause data corruption on your cards, and I try to eliminate every point of failure I possibly can. So after all my backups are complete and my data is where it's supposed to be, then and only then will I reformat those cards in the camera to get them ready for the next job. The only card failures I've experienced were when I was either inserting or removing the card from the camera, or after I've deleted a bunch of photos from a card in camera. Is this overkill? Probably, but it makes me feel better about keeping my client's data safe. So with all that said, this is my workflow. When the photos are taken in camera, the data is written to 2 cards. Once it's uploaded to my dump drive on site, I then have 3 copies. This should be done as soon as possible, either immediately after the job is complete, or sometimes even if it's an all-day event, I'll start shooting files during a break or while I'm eating or something. This is a good start. It gives me 3 copies of my data on 2 different media types, 2 copies in camera, 1 copy on an external hard drive. I even go as far as to store my camera bag and my laptop bag in different locations in my truck, so if I were to happen to get hit or something on the way home, hopefully at least one copy would survive. Once I get home, I copy all my data from my dump drive onto my main editing drive. This is where I catalog everything and make sure all my files are organized and searchable the way that I want them. So how do you decide to set up your file system? One key thing, in my opinion, is to keep it as tidy as you can so that you are able to locate a specific photo or clip in the future should you ever need it. Once all my data is filed appropriately, I then use a program called GoodSync to transfer the files over my network to my NAS. My NAS is set up in a 6 hard drive array using an OS called Unraid. This is a parity system, so I can have hard drives fail and still not lose any data. The OS will tell you when the hard drives are failing, and once you replace them, it uses the parity drive to rebuild the array. There's tons of videos on YouTube showing you how to build a NAS server on a budget. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll link a few of those that were helpful to me in the description, and you can take a look at those when you have time. Once that's complete, GoodSync, which is also installed on my desktop computer, then transfers the data from my NAS to a backup hard drive that's attached to itself, the desktop. So at this point, taking my cards in the camera and the initial dump drive into consideration, I have 6 copies of my data, but they're all on site. The final step in my workflow is completely automated. I use a service called Backblaze, which is a cloud-based backup solution that has unlimited cloud storage as long as the drives stay connected to your host computer. It constantly runs in the background, backing up all my files to the cloud. This gives me my number one, my secure off-site backup solution. Now, is this the best? I don't know, probably not, but it's what I use and it's most cost efficient for what I feel is necessary for me. I'll generally run desktop hard drives until they are about 3/4 of the way full. Then I make a copy of them to an additional external hard drive, and at that point, they both get stored away in my archive. New hard drives are then attached to my desktop, and the process starts again. I know this sounds like a lot of work, and it also can be very expensive, but this can be done fairly cheap to get set up, and you may already have a lot of the parts and the gear you need. Of course, I may be doing this the hard way, so with so many hard drives and whatnot, but all of this can be tailored to fit your needs and your comfort level. This is just how I do it. As far as my network storage, I used an older Dell desktop with an older Gen i7 processor to power it. All I did was disassemble old external hard drives that I had laying around for the storage. The only cost for that was one external hard drive. I had to purchase and get a license for Unraid, which was total about $100. But to be fair, I could have used a free OS called TrueNAS. Had I done a little more research before I built it, I just kind of went with the first options I found. So in all, other than the physical gear, Unraid, GoodSync, and Backblaze have a slight cost. But if you're serious about your business and your data security, you will have some cost along the road. It's just a part of doing business. I'm sure there are probably free options out there that can replace anything in my workflow that is a paid service. So if you do know of anything, please leave it in the comments. I'd be curious to research it and kind of see if it's worth swapping out. I'm just comfortable with these, and they seem to be worth the money and have worked well for me so far. Also, if you had any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll be glad to answer those as best I can. I truly hope you enjoyed this video. If you learned something from it, please subscribe, click that like button, and if you learned what not to do, click subscribe anyway because it's the nice thing to do. So with all that, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you next time. Check, check, checky, check.